Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
Welcome. It is a joy to be with you today. I'm looking forward to a great show, and I invite you to sit back, to take a breath, to listen, to let everything that you receive today ground into your body before you start moving again, so that you start to integrate some ideas, some energies, and perhaps some inspiration into your life. We come into this world innocent, and that innocence is such a beautiful purity that has so much strength and so much incredible vulnerability that it's in its own right is strength. And yet, that innocence is also what has us travel down many different pathways throughout our life, take so many different detours, exit ramps, experiences, meet all kinds of individuals, some that inspire us to greater good, and others that inspire us to lose ourselves, which also can result in a greater good in the long time. But throughout that journey, there's a level of fierceness that must grow. And fierceness in itself starts to change through our lives as we make the steps to return to and reclaim our innocence, as we begin this walk back into emptying out all that we accumulated along the way that covered over that innocence. And that fierceness sometimes looks like the fight or the flight in the beginning. The fierceness can then mold itself into a different kind of willingness, a personal will to make it above all odds, to find a way forward no matter what. That fierceness can also be the part of us that says, I'm just going to surrender and let things happen. That fierceness can be the loving part of us that lets us fall into a heap on the ground and be washed over by our own tears so that we are cleansed once again and can rise back up. And that fierceness can be the independent stand to say, this is who I am. My guest today is Stephanie the Spark, Stephanie James, and she says in her book, Becoming Fierce, the incredibly difficult pain points in our lives, once healed, become the gifts that we give back to the world. It's through these challenges that we can glean wisdom and help other people heal and gain perspective in their own lives. It's often at times in our darkest moments when we feel vulnerable and afraid that our breakthroughs happen. We're talking about her book, Becoming Fierce. And she is a seasoned psychotherapist and transformation coach, a dynamic public speaker, published author, filmmaker, and podcast host. Stephanie James delivers her message in a powerful way to help others find their own internal sparks, break through limiting beliefs, and create an empowered life full of passion and possibility. Her film, When Sparks Ignite, which is playing on Humanity Stream Plus, hosts a highly reputable cast of international thought leaders and change makers. And its powerful message is about how the challenges we face can actually become the match point that ignites something within us that becomes our gift to the world. Welcome, Stephanie, to 1111 Talk Radio.
Simran, I'm so happy to be here with you. It's always a joy to speak with you.
Well, I'm excited about this topic because I think we see many different expressions in the world today. And specifically, if we speak to females and how women are showing up in the world today, I think having an understanding of what becoming fierce in today's times really means and what it requires. And so I think the first place I'd like to start is, can you provide us context as to your definition or expression of fierceness?
Yes, I think because it can also, so often those words, becoming fierce, we hear fierce and we think, oh, that's aggressive, or we think maybe of a negative connotation. But if you look up the definition, one of the words is also fiery. There's a passion to becoming fierce. And so, what I am talking about is part of what you said in your introduction. It's how can we excavate that spark that is inside of us, that essence of who we truly are, our most authentic self in full expression in this world. And so becoming fierce is really how do we access that part of who we authentically are and allow that part of us to shine.
Talk a little bit more. I know your podcast is called Igniting the Spark. And when people think about sparks, and I'm going to mention again, your film is called When Sparks Ignite. So you mentioned spark or essence. Talk a little bit about that part of us, because there may be some that don't have a distinction between who they are as an identity versus what their spark or essence might actually be.
Yeah, that's a great question because our spark is that essential part of us. Some people might call it our soul or your spirit. It's really that part of us that our personality, our behavior, our past decisions, they don't dictate what that is. They don't define what that is. And so it's us beyond personality. It's truly that God seed that was born within us. It's never born, really. It never dies. It's the essential piece of who we are. So that spark, again, that essence of our authenticity, I think, is really who we're meant to be in this world. And so often we let circumstances or situations cover that up. And so it's our greatest work to excavate that spark, to do the work so that we keep uncovering that which is truly us.
I'm so much in agreement. All of my work with 1111 initially came in, and the words I was given was show people how to be devoted to the journey of their soul. And so I find that to be distinctly different than oftentimes the way many individuals are seemingly living their lives in the world, me included, for a very long time, because our ego can convince us that what we're doing is really our soul. But how, in your wisdom, does a person really get to that distinction that they're not forcing something on their soul as opposed to serving their soul?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is that it truly is an inner journey. And so often we are defined, we define ourselves by who we are and how we are in the external world. So, and I know that this was so true for myself for so long. I had a wound from when I was a young child. And so I carried that with me about not being good enough. And so I constantly was trying to earn love. If I just had the right job or the right, relationship, or I looked good enough, somehow then I would feel like, okay, now I know I'm good enough. But the truth, through a beautiful experience in my early 30s, when I had gone to a Sufi school, a healing school in San Francisco, one of the teachers there, the main presenter, after shaking my hand at the beginning and really looking deep into my eyes, in the middle of his presentation on stage, stops and says, "Hey, you in the blue coat," he's pointing into the audience, "I have a message for you." And I looked around and I was like, oh no, it's me. I'm in the blue coat. And he said, "What I want to tell you is," and he said the message, and Simran, I could not hear him. He repeated this message again, and I still couldn't hear him. And people started laughing. And the third time he repeated it, all of the air conditioning units in the place came on and nobody could hear him. Mm. And so he said, my dear, you have such difficulty, such resistance in hearing this message. He said, "Come up here." And I came up and sat on the steps right by the stage. And he said, "My dear, what you need to hear is stop trying."
That's
Stop
such a
trying.
powerful message that you share in the book. And I think that that's something that many people don't realize that they're doing to the point of excess, is trying and trying and trying. And the indicators of exhaustion, burnout, things going kaflooey in one's lives, they're all indicators toward that continual trying. How did you receive that message? What did it initially make you feel in your body or think in your mind when he said that to you?
Yeah, it was an opening. Absolutely. It was one of those moments where you go, oh, my life was one way before that moment and it changed after that moment, because the opening was, oh my gosh, I've been trying to earn all of this outside of myself, externally. And the truth is, in that moment, I became aware, oh, this is an inside job. This is an inside journey. And so it was this journey on learning how to truly love myself. And that it wasn't just an instantaneous, oh, okay, I joke around and say, we hear these messages, oh, just love yourself, be your own best friend. But we know it's not that easy. And so it began this process of how I could truly befriend myself and start showing up and loving myself and making myself a priority in my own life. And literally, really being there and telling myself, hey, I've got your back. And more so, I've got your heart.
Mm. You are a seasoned psychotherapist, and so you worked with many, many people over the years in regard to that. And there's this insertion in your life in different points, such as the one you just expressed, where it was definitely deeply spiritual. Can you illustrate or express the bridge between the psychotherapy and the spiritual for people? Is one the mind and one more the heart? Or are they distinctly different in how they serve a purpose for someone?
Well, I think that there's this beautiful merging. I think we are a whole person. We're a whole being. And so it's not at the exclusion of one or the other. It's embracing the whole. I do believe that we're spiritual beings, having this human experience. We've heard that so many times, and yet it's really true. And so I think the important piece is to keep doing that inward journey. And part of that inward journey is also befriending whatever shows up in our realm of experience. It's not always going to be joyful. It's not always going to be this heightened spiritual experience. As you well know, Simran, sometimes it's despair. Sometimes it's a deep gutting when something's happened, and it's not resisting those emotions. It's not doing a spiritual bypass. It's literally being with our experience as it arises and holding it, really holding those parts of ourselves, not having it be like a negative emotion that comes up and we treat it like the beach ball in the water and we're trying to just push it under the surface, because we know then eventually that's going to pop up and probably hit us right in the face. So it's really this embracing all of it, and really befriending the whole journey, and knowing that we have chosen this life that's going to be, we're in a life of duality. So we're going to have those beautiful moments and those, incredible, just lovely experiences. And at the same time, there's times we're going to go through some really rough, rocky, challenging times, and that's okay. That's part of what we signed up for. And we can embrace it all.
That journey inward, I would say, is definitely one of fierce love. But there are so many individuals, and I wonder sometimes, especially with our younger people and the advent of so much of the social media, the influencer status, the ways that things appear to be image-based, if these individuals are desperately trying to find things outside themselves. And so to make that shift inward, and rather than becoming what many might claim as fierce externally in trying to gun it or get theirs or make it in the world, what is the pivot? How would you suggest someone make that pivot to shifting from desperately trying to find the external to devotionally looking toward the internal?
Yeah, I truly believe there is power in the pause. We are in a society where we are so distracted. And for young people in particularly, it's like these lives on screens, and it's such a dopamine hit, if we're on TikTok or Instagram, how many likes have we gotten? And so that's what people get addicted to. I think there is so much power in just saying, I am going to stop, even if it's for 5 minutes. I was just having this conversation actually yesterday with a couple of my clients that are saying, I want to learn how to meditate, but it's difficult. It's hard for me to just stop and be quiet. My mind gets really activated. And so, what I was telling them in my other room, I have a sign that literally actually says, be still. And it's there as that reminder that if we just start with stopping the noise, stopping the distraction, even if you start with 2 minutes and just breathe, you begin that inward journey. It can help to even have something, of course, to focus on. So what I was inviting a couple of my clients to do yesterday is to really get in their bodies, because so often we are so distracted, we don't even know what's going on within us. So the simple practice of starting with your toes, you could start with your toes on your left foot and then slowly move into the balls of your feet, your arch, your heel, and then you slowly go up one side, and then you switch to the other. And then as you go up your body, you're just tuning into actually inner sensing. You're going within. And we know that our emotions are stored cellularly. So we can feel these emotional states within us. We can notice, where am I tight or where am I tense? And so that would be my invitation to people as a possible entry point, just to start that simple practice of going within, and you can build it from there. And the fierce part is what you're doing is you are literally building a muscle, just like you would if you went to work out in the gym. You start by just showing up for yourself every day and saying, I'm going to give myself this first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And that's how you start building and cultivating that inward fierceness that says, I am committed to this journey of discovering my inner light.
You are definitely speaking my language. I am continually urging that individuals do more nothing, that they step into that place of pause to really tap into the presence of themselves. That was a beautiful exercise that you shared. And we've given so much value to constantly moving, doing, building, going on to the next thing, creating the next thing, that oftentimes the pause and the stillness time becomes so undervalued. And yet there's so much more power there, because that's where we shift into not simply being human, but being the spiritual being that now has the power through their humanness to create worlds. And so how did you then step into a place where you slowed down after that experience and stopped trying? That realization that you had been pushing for so long, and that it was time to really connect more deeply with yourself.
Yes. What was beautiful is one of the things that we practiced during that week was a practice called the remembrance. And it's a 30-minute basically meditation. And that began, for the next 26 years, I've been meditating. And that practice has taken on a lot of different paths, but I think each path led inward. And so that is what has been the most incredible journey of my life. And it was literally 7 years ago when I had been practicing a meditation that was literally about going into the darkness and going into like a womb space, if you will. Because oftentimes there's a negative connotation with the darkness. We've been told that that's some negative place. And actually the darkness is a place of creation. So in this meditation, after about 3 months of practicing this meditation, I got done with that meditation and literally had a download right after that, like, oh my goodness, through my podcast and radio show at the time, I had met so many incredible people, and the download was, some of the most serving hearts and brilliant minds on the planet. You need to make a film. And now, mind you, at that moment, and you and I were talking about answering the call before we got on the show, and hearing that call at the time, I had just gone through a divorce and I had 67 cents in my savings account. But I answered that call and contacted the people, and people came. Some of the most beautiful, beautiful people came, and we created an incredible film with an award-winning film crew. And it's just been such a beautiful gift in my life and such a beautiful gift to share.
That's so powerful, because oftentimes it is that space that we give ourselves to rest within the darkness that we start to see the light, and we start to receive the true inspiration that is designed for us. And we can then answer that call that has come into our lives that lead us to the very next step. You have another book that's coming up that was another one of those calls, and it's titled "I'm Dying to Tell You About Death." And I mention that because within the Becoming Fierce book, you talk a little bit about death and a moment when you were crying, and your daughter, who was very young, helped you to understand or pointed out in a very innocent and knowing way that you had no reason to cry, that there was no death and there was even no heaven, that you weren't losing anyone. I'd love for you to share that story and help bring some understanding as to how that really impacted your journey going forward.
That was absolutely one of the most powerful moments in my life. As a single mom, 25 years old, I had a 4-year-old daughter, and I had gotten the news that my Aunt Gwen, who had been struggling with breast cancer, they had done exploratory surgery on her, and it had spread throughout her body. And so my mother had called and said, they have told her she's got about 3 months to live. And while still in the bathroom, I'm in the tub just crying, and little Acacia, and I always have to say, I always find it fascinating. The name Acacia is what came to me to name her. And acacia is the Greek word for immortality. And it's the tree of life in Africa. I had no idea that she would be the one teaching me about our immortal souls when I named her that. But as she came into the bathroom, she said to me, "Mama, why are you crying?" And I said, "Oh, sweetheart, Mama just doesn't want anyone to die." And she looked at me and she kind of shook her head with this very knowing look. And she said, "Mama, we never die." And then I said, "Oh, honey, I know we go to heaven." Now, I said this, and I have to say, we didn't talk about God. We didn't go to church. And so it was interesting. I mean, I don't even know that she knew what a concept of heaven was, but she looked at me again and she said, "Mama, there is no heaven." She said, "When I was a light up in the sky with God." And then she paused and she looked at me and she said, "Do you remember your other mother, Dorothy?" And I was like, oh my God, my other mother, Dorothy. That was my grandmother Dorothy, that died when I was 13 years old. And my grandfather had remarried the year after to Grandma Seal. That's the only person she knew. I didn't have pictures of my grandma and grandpa. I didn't have a picture of Grandma Dorothy. We didn't talk about Grandma Dorothy. So it was so interesting. That's how she phrased it, your other mother, Dorothy. And she said, her light was in the sky with my light. And then God put some of her light in me, and I got to come down and be your daughter.
That is such a beautiful story. Really one of those heart-tingling, hair-raising stories that is sprinkled with so much powerful truth that you cannot deny when those types of words come out of a little one. It reminds me of a moment where my own 3-year-old child had said something very, very similar. And it helps to bring attention to not only some of the beliefs that we come to believe and pass on, but that we really do need to let go of a lot of those beliefs and go back to living as these knowing and spiritually eternal beings that we are, that have far more power than we ever deemed possible. The truth is, we never arrive at it altogether. It is so important to know that there are continued lessons. As long as we are breathing, we have something to learn. Healing happens in layers. Therefore, we never quite get to the point where it is all figured out. When the easy thing would be to shut down, fierce love calls for us to pull up what is resilient within us and stay open, to acknowledge the pain and fear and to remain open-hearted, because love is the ultimate healing balm. This is from Stephanie James' book, Becoming Fierce. I want to tell you that she also has a couple of things upcoming. You definitely want to tune into her podcast, which is Igniting the Spark. Check out her film, When Sparks Ignite, playing on Humanity Stream Plus. And also she has an upcoming event, a summit on raising consciousness with Humanity's team, May 8th, 9th, and 10th, 2025. And it is all about actualizing oneness. So you can contact Stephanie to find out more information. Her website is stephaniejames.world. That's stephaniejames.world. And before we go to commercial break, I want to also mention my trilogy, Living, Being, and Knowing. Definitely get your set of books. These are oracles that you can open at any place and take in a little bit of the wisdom to marinate within you during that day. The first book is Living, the 7 Blessings of Human Experience, which is all about your identity and personality and who you believe yourself to be in the world. The second book is Being, the 7 Illusions that Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace, and that is concerned with all of the inner work, the depth work around the shadow, the animal, and all of the energies that lay within you that are in the unconscious. And the final book is Knowing, the 7 Human Expressions of Grace. And this is all about opening to your humanity and the gateways and keys toward opening that doorway to your divinity. So get your trilogy on self-actualization, Living, Being, and Knowing, and you can get the discount bundle on my website. Once again, my guest is Stephanie James from stephaniejames.world, and the book we're speaking of is Becoming Fierce. We'll be right back after these messages.
Follow Voice America at facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Do you want more? More joy, more abundance, more power and presence? How would it feel to have more loving relationships, more empowered community, greater fulfillment, and life purpose? The 1111 Mastermind community inspires, empowers, guides, and supports transformation. Shift your mind, expand your heart, deepen insights, let go and chart a new course, dream a new dream. The 1111 Mastermind community is an online portal for personal transformation and soulful expansion. Go to courses.1111mag.com. That's courses.1111mag.com. Change begins with you. Let it be simple, convenient, and transformative. The time is now. Step through the 1111 gateway. Courses.1111mag.com.
Have you seen 1111? Do you wonder why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? 11, 111, 22, 33, 444. People all over the world are seeing 1111 and learning the language of universal communication. Subscribe to 1111 Magazine today. www.1111mag.com. 1111 Magazine is a bi-monthly print publication that offers a rich, multi-sensory experience. As you engage with experts and topics of consciousness, become enlightened, empowered, and energized, so you live a passionate and authentic life of conscious choices. 1111 Magazine, a daily staple for lifting the mindset, discovering the heart, and stepping into conscious living. 1111 Magazine. Order now at www.1111mag.com. 1111mag.com.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
My guest today is Stephanie James. She is a psychotherapist, transformational coach, published author, filmmaker, and podcast host. Her latest book, Becoming Fierce, takes you through a compelling and dynamic journey to expand personal power, purge what doesn't serve, and design an authentic life that is deeply fulfilling. With profound wisdom and decades of research, Stephanie gives her readers a North Star to guide them to solid shores, thrive through challenging times, and cultivate strength and courage, and create substantial change in their lives. So definitely pick up your copy of Becoming Fierce. And you can get on her email list at stephaniejames.world. There you will be kept informed about her podcast, Ignite the Spark, her film, When Sparks Ignite, and also the upcoming event, May 8th, 9th, and 10th of 2025 with Humanity's Team, a summit on raising consciousness and actualizing oneness. So definitely stay connected with her. This is our time on this earth, and we are the co-creators in everything we experience when we embrace the fullness of this life, the painful and the passionate, the ecstasy and the angst. We allow our spirits to actualize their true purpose. This life is often experienced in duality. What if we just loved the entire experience of it? What if by embracing whatever showed up in our lives, we were able to live in a flow state with more joy and serenity? This is from Stephanie's book, Becoming Fierce. I want to talk a little bit about that aspect of it. We don't have everything all figured out, and that is part of the beauty of the journey of us, that we are here to experience and express and to unfold all of these moments as ways to garner greater wisdom. Talk a little bit about how healing happens in layers and why it's important to not necessarily get to the point right away.
Well, and as you just said, I don't think there ever is an end point. That doesn't mean you're going to be in therapy or working with a coach your entire life. But what it means is to be open to that continual healing and that we don't ever arrive. I think that that's one of the things that I've spoken to so many of my clients about. They'll say, well, so when does it end? And just like you said, when do we have it all figured out? And there is no arrival point. That's what we're in. We're in this school of life. And so as long as we're breathing, there are lessons to learn. There is healing. And I even think about, even though we may have healed something, as a trauma specialist, I've worked with a lot of people and done EMDR, which is a protocol for dealing with trauma and PTSD. And when people are done with, let's say, that specific modality of healing, what I liken it to is that, we may have really healed, which is beautiful. And yet that part of us will always be a part of us. It's not like if you injured your arm, you wouldn't cut off your arm. You'd learn how to assimilate it into your being. And that wound, I think of if you have a scar on your arm, that scar, if you rub it, it's got a sensitivity to it. Yes, it's healed, but there's still a sensitivity. So it's okay. For example, if your wound was around abandonment in your life, you may have done beautiful work and healed a lot, but know that it's like a spiral. Healing can be like a spiral, and it comes around again. Life will present you with another opportunity to look at that wound, but in different ways. It won't be the same gutting wound, perhaps, but it allows you to look at that and say, oh, is there an ointment? Is there a balm, so to speak? Is there another piece? And truly what oftentimes it is it's an invitation this is an opportunity for me to learn, how can I accept and love myself more deeply? Is there a part of me that I can love and forgive and release and surrender so that I keep moving towards that wholeness, that true expression of who I am, that essence that we spoke of in the beginning? How can I continue to move towards that?
That's such a beautiful analogy with the scar and the bomb, because I think that there is a wish for many people that, well, once I'm done with that, or some of them even say that, well, I've done that healing, I've completed all that work, and yet there has to be that level of sensitivity that remains with us. And I think that's part of what makes us our humanity. Alongside that, so often when people have experiences or certain wounds, there can be an added part of aloneness or feeling like one doesn't belong. Can you talk a little bit about belonging and finding that pathway back towards feeling belong? I think you actually pose a question within the book that says, so how does being fierce interface with belongingness, and what does that look like?
You know, we have such a deep need. It's an inherent need. It's hardwired within us to belong. We survived in community. That's how we were safe. And this sense of belongingness, again, we can feel like it's outside of us. It's external. I need to belong to a group. Now, as a therapist, I absolutely would tell someone social contact, how we connect, is very important. It's vitally important to our well-being. But that sense of belongingness can also be cultivated, and maybe more deeply so, as we connect to that divine spark within us and to the divinity that is a part of who we are. It's not separate from us. So I think, you know, we belong to the eternal. We belong to the oneness. And when we can connect to that, that sense of loneliness moves away. I think, you know, one of the things I've shared with you is, as my relationship ended about 4 months ago, and I was living alone again, there was this sense of, oh, I'm alone. And being able to really move that mindset from, yeah, there are moments where I might feel lonely after 4 years of connection daily with this person. And yet, as I deepen the connection with that eternal spark within me, when I really connect to the divine, there's no loneliness, because I can tap into that place where I am connected to it all. And so that's what I invite people to do as well. And there's a beautiful, simple exercise where you can put your hand on your heart and feel into your heart, feel into the way that you love others. You might feel into also the way you have received love in the past. And from that, as an entry point, start noticing your connection first to yourself, and then you can start radiating it out to loved ones and friends. And you marinate on that for a little bit, and then move it to acquaintances and people that you might see, like your barista or the checkout clerk in the store. And then you continue to really feel into that connection to people in your town, in your state, in your country, and then allowing that to go all the way around the world and right back to your heart. And we begin to realize that each one of us are these essential threads in the tapestry of humanity. And so we already belong. Our minds, it was Albert Einstein who said we live in this optical delusion, and it's optical delusion of separateness. So when we can tap in to that oneness, to that connectedness that is truly inherent in us, then that loneliness disappears.
And once again, you've pointed to that we have to go within and get it there before it can be given outside anywhere else. And so it is always this turning within. I'd like to touch on something that very subtly came through your shares, because I think that there are many people that do have that idea of, well, I'm going to get to this place where life is going to be all good, or I'm going to reach this moment where I may have the scar of that wound, but I don't necessarily have to revisit those kinds of situations anymore. And yet, I have found on the spiritual journey that the deeper we go into our own self-awareness and actualization, it doesn't necessarily mean we won't bump up against challenge or have to be present and aware to ourselves. We actually are going to continue to clear things and allow the experiences to come in and go out that allow this wave of us dipping down and up and down and up again and again, because to me that is also part of being human. How do you feel about that, Stephanie? If you look at your life and experiences, is your philosophy that we are continually superseding everything, or are we simply mastering levels and sometimes revisiting some of the same things just to see how far we've come?
Yeah, as I said, I truly believe that it is not just almost, it is like a spiral, and things do come back around for us to have an opportunity to look at them. And in my own experience, what I think about is, for myself, I feel like my purpose here in this world is really to bring as much love and healing to me and through me as possible. And the to me is by actualizing it inside of me. And I like to think of it like I am a conduit of the divine. And so when I look internally, if I become aware of a cobweb in that conduit, which might be a past wound or something that I haven't accepted or haven't forgiven about myself, then I want to do the work to continue to clear that conduit so more love and healing can flow through me to the world. And so I deeply mean it when I feel like, it is our wounds. It is as we become aware of those, then we become a clearer conduit when we're willing to meet those and look at those places and nurture those places and help to heal those places. It's not a one and done. It will never be a one and done, And so I think when we embrace actually the beauty of that and we don't fear it, then we're truly able to move beyond it, because it's not that we're holding our breath and going, okay, I can just have this one negative experience and then life is going to be good. Life is already good. And I think that's part of it. I mean, even, amidst some of the deepest, darkest times that I've gone through, and definitely some dark nights of the soul, I still, this entire summer, found myself doing my meditations in the backyard on my beautiful swing on my porch, surrounded by beauty, and really tapping into that place where I can exhale, where I can continue to breathe through that conduit and keep clearing it out. And that's my invitation to each one of the listeners, is to really look at your life as the beautiful journey that it is, and that it's, the path is not a straight one. I saw this great meme online, and, it says how we think life's supposed to be. And it showed just this straight line. And then it said, how life really looks. And it was this squiggly line that went in and down and around and twisted. And it's like, that's really it. That's the journey. And if we don't resist it, I love the gentleman that wrote Untethered Soul. And I don't know why it's escaping
Singer.
me right now. Singer, thank you.
Yes.
I love his quote, which is so beautiful, where he says, suffering is when we want this moment to be anything other than what it is. And I have found that to be so powerful and so true in my life, that when I just accept, and as you said in the beginning too, that power of surrender to this moment, it might be uncomfortable, it might be unpleasant, but when I resist it, it amplifies. So it truly is this befriending of our entire journey, moment by moment by moment.
That's so much what has to take place, that facing of the fear, the facing of the cobwebs continually. It's beautifully put. And it speaks to power. It speaks to that power that we desire outside of us, and it speaks to really mastering personal power and learning how to heal that relationship with power. Can you speak to healing that relationship as you move through this work, particularly when it comes to becoming fierce? Because there is that pendulum that pulls us out, wanting us to be more powerful and dominant in the world. We see a lot of that today, that dominance. And yet, it's a completely different energy and feeling when we're able to come back in and find our power, and it shifts who we are out in the world. Speak to healing that relationship with power.
Yeah, it is so powerful because you hit it on the head. I mean, it's this whole thing of when we externalize our power, unless it's coming from a really authentic source, it's power over. And that's not true power. I feel like one of the most powerful things we can do is learn the power of surrender, which some people would think, oh, surrender, that feels like I'm waving the white flag, and then I'm a doormat, and then I'm a coward. And yet it takes so much courage to step into that place we were just speaking of, where you're accepting that this is what my life is right now, today, no matter what is here. And from that place, when we're not fearing life, I think one of the ways we befriend power too is not to give it away. Part of the way we give it away is when we're playing the what if game in the future. And yes, we have our brain, we have a natural negativity bias. So our brain is scanning the environment for some kind of threat. And we can train our brains. We can reel ourselves back in when we catch ourselves playing the what if game, or if we feel ourselves or hear ourselves ruminating about the past. Both of these places, we are not existing. But the way our brain works is they're experiencing, as we think of oh my gosh, the catastrophe, the what if this happens, our mind is holding that up as if it's experiencing it now. And so we have the anxiety, we have the worry, we have the angst. So again, coming back to the power is in the present moment. And as we befriend the present moment, as we reel ourselves back in, that's where we can truly find the source of power, and that it is within us. And when we allow ourselves to be quiet and to go within, there is so much power within us that most people, I would say a lot of people, haven't even tapped into. And a beautiful way for people to just tap into this place is to do a meditation where you're meditating through your chakras, your energy centers of your body. Again, as we've been talking about, Simran, is bringing your attention inward and to breathe into these different energy centers. And I actually have this very short meditation of the chakras that I give my clients. And if anyone wants to reach out to me on my website, I'm happy to share it. It is one of the ways that we can realize that power, that energy is within us. And that is our true authentic power.
Beautiful. You write in the book, part of becoming fierce is finding that inner voice and not just speaking the inner truth, but also embodying it. Walking the talk and living in alignment with our highest self is how we inhabit this earth fully empowered. So let's speak to now that alignment. We've taken the pause. We're clearing the cobwebs. We're amplifying our chakras. We're learning to use our voice. What is the next step in alignment toward becoming fierce?
Well, I think then my truth is it's sharing it. I think that as you get this realization, as you continue to connect with your own internal power, I think there's just this natural rising energy where you want to share it. You want to share that love, that healing. You are able to speak your truth to others. And as we talked about, connection is such a powerful thing. And one of the exercises in that book that I invite people to practice is something in the morning I call the 3 C's. And it's 3 questions you can ask yourself in the morning. The first C is how do I take care of myself today? And you're just focusing on that 24 hours because how you take care of yourself today isn't going to look the same way as how you took care of yourself yesterday. So this morning it might be, I want to go on a walk with the dogs. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do a workout. And then I'm going to be ready for my day. And throughout the day, I might do specific things to pause so that I'm doing a pattern interrupt and making sure that I'm becoming present in my day and in my life. The second C is how do I connect today? And so I tell people the first way to connect is with ourselves and connect to that internal spark. And then it's how do I connect to others? Because we know this is essential. I mean, the research that they've done with Russian orphan babies, when we don't have that connection, we die. And so in order to thrive, it's first, how do we connect to ourselves? And then how do we want to connect to others? It might be through text. And I say a phone call better, a Zoom call better, in person the best. But as we know, Simran, as you and I are on this call together, we are literally exchanging subatomic particles. Quantum theory would tell us we are becoming a part of each other. And so it's whenever we bring our intention and attention to connecting, we are able to do so. And the last C is how can I be creative today? Which is really tapping into that infinite and dark place that we were talking of earlier. It's the place of all creation. So being creative, it can be as simple, I always tell people, it can be as simple as brushing your teeth with your opposite hand because you want to carve new neural pathways, or it can really be going into that creative space, which is going to be coming into that silent place. And when you go there and you do that, beautiful things emerge. And so I say, shine that light, share that light. I really believe that's the next step because each one of us does have something beautiful to share. And I really do believe we need one another. We are interdependent and interconnected. And together we create such a much more beautiful world.
We are all fierce. We all have this fierce nature inside of us. Sometimes we forget that despite how much we have covered it up, our fierce self has shone through in moments and refused to be silenced. In each of our lives, even if only for a moment, the beautiful spark that is the essence of each one of us has caught flame, and we have fully lived it, fully lit up. This is from Stephanie James' book, Becoming Fierce. And I invite you to check out her website, stephaniejames.world. Find out more about all the things that she's doing, from her film to her podcast to her upcoming summit on raising consciousness. Again, the book is called Becoming Fierce, and then be on the lookout or make a note that she's got an upcoming book called I'm Dying to Tell You About Death. So you want to keep her on your radar. I want to also mention that we have moved through the first of a series of eclipses, and with the fall equinox, this is a time to really let go, to purge, to allow yourself to release all the things that no longer serve you, and to listen in the quiet moments for the call, because there is change coming, and we're all being asked to change. Will you answer the call? Until next week, I am Simran, in love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Remember, you are not on the journey. You are the journey.